November 15th meeting to order. We have acknowledgement of a quorum, and the one and only item on the agenda is downtown parking ordinance, and I will call Chief Deering up to go over it with us. Good morning.
Good morning. Appreciate the offer to come in front of the full board. We've had conversations with the Transportation Committee ongoing, and obviously downtown parking has been something that's been issue for my entire career here, 28 years, coming up on 28 years. So the current ordinance that we're working under now, I just have a very strong feeling that it's no longer good law. It's just by definition of good law is that it's known to the public. I think our ordinance has become so convoluted with people coming in and out of downtown, nobody really understands what is required of them. It's accepted by the community. Clearly there's some controversy depending on how you fall on it, and then it's more importantly able to be enforced. And the current ordinance that we have regarding downtown parking is no longer able to be enforced by the police department. So I feel very strongly that the ordinance needs to be addressed. I've shared this with the committee, but just for folks here and maybe watching, there's no longer a database being collected. There was an agreement initially from the Downtown Association, then transferred to the city. Businesses are no longer reporting their vehicles. I understand it's difficult in today's day and age, transient nature of employees, different vehicles, all those things, but we no longer have a database to enforce. Nobody's issuing commuter passes. There's no shopping passes being issued. So all the elements that were initially well-intended, put in place in the ordinance to allow it to achieve the goal that I believe the business owners downtown want are no longer in place. So I feel strongly that having a law on the books that's unenforceable is something we should really strive to not do. So we need to address it. We brought a couple of options to the Transportation Committee, smart meters, which were an option, putting parking meters in that are ELPR, license plate reader engaged, that would be very little staff time, be a revenue source, and that's something that I'm picking up that is not an option that we want to move forward on. We talked about time, and again, I'm sharing with you my perception of it. If I'm incorrect, that's one of the reasons we're having the meeting today, is to make sure that we're all on the same page. Timed zones, which is something we would hearken back to before this ordinance, 2-hour parking, 3-hour, 4-hour parking, those options. It's resource intensive from a police department standpoint, but also
Can you try to be closer to the bike, maybe?
Not only can I try, Jay, I will. But if I get too close and too comfortable, then you let me know. Maybe my peeps could turn me up a bit. All right, thank you. Sorry about that. I have to say that is the first time in my career anyone's ever told me to speak up. Thank you, Jay. I appreciate it. Timed restrictions, and during our conversations, certainly a passionate concern over putting the infliction on the customer themselves in order to achieve our goal of turnover in the downtown, or an adequate parking space in the downtown. And so that leaves us with, in my mind, two options. One, and I'm cautious to say this because I know it can be interpreted wrong, but from a public safety standpoint, I have very little concern with our parking in the downtown. We don't have an increase of accidents because of the manner in which we park. We don't have unsafe. It's been very well laid out by our city planners, very well maintained by our Department of Public Works. So from a public safety aspect, I have very little concern with a laissez-faire approach and no restrictions and letting the free market settle it out from a public safety standpoint. One of my pledges to the community and remains excellence, policing, accountability, and responsive to the community. So under responsive to the community, that's where we pick up the goal of our ordinance and any change to our ordinance. Right? It's what the community wants. And that's also one of the things that makes well-established principles of what makes a good law, is it's reflective of the community and responsive. So here today to present the second option, which is, I believe, is a good compromise. I understand there'll be issues with it. I understand it probably comes down to the manner in which we enforce it. But simplification of our ordinance and making it basically a posted restriction, much like you see in other communities, much like you see in private parking lots and making it a customer-only parking. Having that very clearly posted. You know, there's very little posting downtown that explains our ordinance right now with downtown parking. That's a concern to me. That's the people that we want to, first off, our goal for enforcement is compliance. It's not to generate revenue or tickets, it's compliance. We want people to abide by the ordinance so we get the desired goal, and I'm assuming the desired goal of the ordinance is to have turnover in our parking, so or parking available for our customers. In order for it to be posted, customer-only posting would be posted by our partners at DPW, very similar to the 3 to 6 a.m. Parking restriction. It's something that would be investigatory-based. So what I mean by that, it would be complaint-driven initially. It would be complaint-driven. We hear the concerns from some of the business owners, and they would have many avenues to engage their police department. Jess has worked on a fantastic online form that would be very easy to submit when you had a complaint. You can always call our fantastic dispatchers, and we would assign staff. We're investigating right now adding a full-time community service officer position back to our, I shouldn't say adding, I should say regaining a full-time community service officer that would be assigned during the hours of the ordinance downtown, because we know the best way to successfully enforce an ordinance like this is for our business owners and customers to be engaged, and also for your police department to be engaged. And if you remember, we had 2 longtime CSOs, and CSO Lonnie Weber, CSO Jim Quaddy, that knew the vehicles that were down there, and that human side is what allowed the ordinance to be enforced. So with that, I'm sure I have plenty more to speak. If you know me at all, I could probably go on, but I think that's kind of the highlights of it until we get into the meat of the ordinance. And it really boils down to customer-only parking posted. When we come, we'll do an investigation. It's not that difficult for us to determine who's a customer and who's an employee. It's not that difficult. And again, I understand there's plenty of loopholes or exceptions, but we're pretty good at what we do. And we'll figure it out. We're not looking for the exceptions to enforce. We're looking for the knowing, intentional violators of the ordinance. Because again, our goal is not to ticket. Our goal is to change behaviors and comply with the ordinance. And our goal is to help the community get their goal. And again, I'm assuming that the goal is to have parking available for customers. With that, I guess I'd look for your direction. Do you want me to walk us through our initial draft of the ordinance, or I'll take your questions? I forgot, I promised some of the crowd that we'd start with a musical number, but that no longer seems appropriate. Sorry, Kevin.
You guys have, I know Tony has questions.
Oh, really? Okay. Mike, you know me well. I actually don't have any questions other than I breezed this over because this meeting was called very quickly without a lot of notice. So I had to remove a lot of stuff around to be here. Obviously, most of our board, or some of our board, hasn't made it. Can you remind me what the fine is, or what the ticket will be for?
Yeah, the citation now, our standard citation is a $20, for posted
Right.
restriction is a $20 ticket. And that's
Okay.
something we can obviously work on if we don't believe we're getting compliance with that level of citation.
Okay, because the last time this board, I've been on it 7 years, this has been an issue the whole time. I thought we had come to a conclusion, this was just kind of prior to COVID, to move it to $50. Because I said it should hurt. There's, down by my south side, I would say there's probably 4 consistent violators out of, let me think, 30 parking spaces that I can kind of see. I've certainly had conversations with them. I will tell you that prior to your presence, Chief Moyler was part of that decision-making, or part of hearing us out. And for a very, very short time before COVID hit, they instigated basically, or put in place, this newer policy. It never went to Common Council, and I was surprised by that when I read nothing ever changed there. But there was some initial enforcement, and it was by the CSOs. And I noticed that the streets were vacant as soon as there was some warnings. It was I think it was rolled out very well. There was initial cards telling people, heads up, the rules are changing. And all those people went somewhere else. But when COVID hit again, the streets were kind of empty anyway. But it did work. I think, Jay, I even had your concurrence. It did work. And I'm not looking to put more load on you and your obviously your department, but you must enforce parking all over the city. Your CSOs enforce parking in my lot. If I don't have my little tag hanging there, they will write a ticket. I'm told that people complain. I did ask you in the transportation committee meeting, do you get many complaints on parking? And I thought you'd kind of said no, but Jess said she gets a lot of complaints. I should warn people I'm blunt. Complaints are fine, but if you don't want to take any further action, then don't complain. I've taken action. So I love this idea that it's changing. I think we almost have to self-police. I do want to remind people listening that with the redevelopment downtown or redo of Downtown Street, we are gaining, I think, 34 spaces, somewhere around there. That's significant in my opinion. I hope that doesn't invite more lazy people that don't honor the rules. I personally have no problem reaching out to you if there's a consistent violator, but in my case, I've spoken to them. I think if there was an initial enforcement, and maybe every month or every quarter, I think you'll get those people to behave. So I just wanted to make those known. You were certainly aware how I felt about the parking meter issue. I just think that was the wrong place, and I appreciate you acknowledging it's probably not going to happen. I just think the fine should hurt, and because $20 isn't enough, I think, because I've seen these repeat offenders don't seem to be bothered by that. I wouldn't mind $100. I pay a lot of money, probably almost $5,000 a year for my people to park in the Walnut Street lot. So I think everybody should pitch in and behave. I've got more to say, but that's good for now. Sorry, that wasn't a question. I just wanted to...
No, actually, you had some great points, and I appreciate what you said, because it gives me a chance to clarify a couple of things, if you wouldn't mind.
No, not a problem.
First, and I want to make this very clear, I appreciate your concern over the workload on our department, but that's not an issue. This is exactly why our police department, your police department, exists. We have great 96 fantastic employees who are dedicated to protecting and serving the community. This is a duty of ours. So I appreciate what you're saying. Yes, we're looking at a balance to make sure we're not taking on a duty that's maybe unreasonable or unnecessary in 2022. That's not the case. But thank you for bringing that up. I'd like just real briefly to talk about timeline. I know it is coming up quickly, but we do see the 2023 construction as a force multiplier for us. Right? People are going to have to park off of North Main Street in the downtown section next year, and that's a great time to ingrain changed behavior. So that's a human side that ends up being a great force multiplier. So we are rushing a little bit, although I would say that things been on the books for at least the last 20 years, and it's time that it gets addressed. So, but I appreciate that. But just wanted to let you know, I hear your comment on the timeline, but that's why. I think I agree with you, and we will roll it out the same way. Just much like we do winter parking. It's coming, right? And we know we get more complaints about winter parking. The captain will back me on this. Hi, Cap. We can take someone to jail for doing something heinous, and they will apologize and come back. We give someone a $20 parking ticket for picking on the wrong side of the street, and they give our clerks hell. It's a passion. And I think it's because most time people that are being enforced are good people that made an error and didn't know, and again, good law means the public is aware. That was a great story, but I forgot exactly what I meant by it, but I'll come back around. Yeah, oh, I'm sorry. So, I think there's we will roll it out the same way. We'll roll it out with some education, partly is the public session today. Today's more to get that input, but once we work with you to firm up this ordinance, we're going to have some public listening education sessions. We're going to make sure we put out, Jess is already working on a frequently asked question or some format of that so that there's an online presence that will describe it. It's not going to take much. It's customer parking only, right? So that's the nice thing about it. It's very clear. It's a posted restriction, much like you see anywhere else. But we'll roll it out well. We will start with a warning period, again, to change the behaviors, because our goal, if we adopt as we are, I'll put that big asterisk, right? Sorry, I don't mean to be presumptuous, but if we do, our goal is to change behaviors and compliance. Our goal is not citations and revenue. So we'll roll it out in a way that we give everyone a chance. And then again, that's why 2023 is a good timeline for us, that we're going to have that force multiplier to help us all find a better place to park. And that's a whole different issue, right? That we're talking specifically about our ordinance today. The last thing that I do want to say, well, two, I guess. One thing, the fine, I hear what you're saying, fine should hurt, but I also agree that, or I also believe strongly that most people will comply. We're looking for the intentional violators, and I would like a chance to change their behavior through a standard and consistent enforcement. Then if that doesn't work, then we can always come back and change our fine level. So I'll think more about, our team will think more about that level and probably discuss that more. But I think, boy, getting a ticket every day, if you're that intentional violator, let's hope that changes your behavior. And if not, then we can address that. I'm very much for consistent enforcement. And if it's posted restrictions are a fine in this place, the fine should be that at that place, unless there's a strategic, measured, and reasonable reason to change that. My last thing that I just wanted to say, it will be complaint-based, at least initially. We're putting in some, mechanisms, some technology. Our current squad cameras have license plate reading capabilities, and we're working with our vendor right now to utilize that in this format, but that would take some time. So what we do is, if you were a constant violator, then we'd have your plate in a hot list, and when the CSO drove down the road, if it would be the technology version of CSO Weber, it would ding, there's that vehicle. But that's going to take a while, and hopefully that doesn't work, because hopefully we don't have consistent violators. But initially it's going to be complaint-based. It will take the community to be engaged in the enforcement, and I think that messaging is important. It's not tattling, it's not complaining, it's not, well, it is complaining, but you get my point. It's not snitching. It's the community, this group, that feels this ordinance is needed. Because, go back to my initial comment, from a public safety standpoint, a laissez-faire approach is just fine with the police department from a public safety standpoint, not from a responsive and engaged community and economic development standpoint. So in order for it to work, the community who wants this needs to be engaged. And that complaint model can sound tough, right? Can sound like, I don't want to bother the police, I don't want to get involved. It's actually you being part of our team. My message is pretty clear. The people are the police and the police are the people. You need to be engaged in the safety and the functioning of your community. And I think with that messaging, that will help us to solicit that response. Can
I just back you up on those comments? I apologize to talk over you. Thank you for those words. You're much more eloquent than me. I'm a little blunter. I appreciate that. And it should be driven, and nobody should feel that it is snitching. I just hope it's not complaining without action. I call that whining. And honestly, again, I have 22,000 square feet in my building, and I have 4 spots in front of my building. I will let you know, and I will certainly give an option to those violators that I know who they are. Hey, it's coming again, because they did comply, and because that's why I like the $50. But I appreciate those words. Those are well said, and I agree with them.
Yeah, we had discussions of just sending another letter and putting some warning stickers out with our current ordinance, and I'm stubborn on this one. You can blame me. I feel that is complaining without consequences. That's warning without consequences. If it's an enforcement that we don't believe is enforceable, we can't promise things. Now, we've made it very clear that we would still investigate all those cases, and you're right, our department doesn't get many complaints, but the city does. And just being very honest, I understand why people wouldn't be calling the police department. It's kind of de facto known that the ordinance is no longer relevant and not being enforced. So I don't blame the people who are upset about it, frustrated with it, but not taking that action. But I feel strongly that if we put something in place that's enforceable, that's reasonable, that's known to the public, that in order for you to violate, you need to make a conscious decision to violate our social contract, and I think people will be engaged in saying, you know, my employees are following it. I'm often naive, though, so please educate me if I'm totally wrong.
Tim, has there been any conversation as far as maybe reducing the cost of the paid parking permits that are available? I know I talked to Jess a little bit this morning, said there were plenty of spots open in the Hickory lot. So I'm just thinking if they're going unpaid and empty, wouldn't it be better to reduce the cost and get them full, and then you're still making as much, if not more money? And it would help us to encourage our employees. Like, you know, if I, as an owner, would purchase the pass, if I had 4 employees, that's $1,000. That's a lot of money for a small business.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Peggy. I like your scarf. I don't want to put my foot in my mouth because that's kind of outside of my sphere. It sounds reasonable. Although I will say, I think if this moves through, I don't know that we're going to have many open spots left in those lots. But that's something that why we're here today, and so certainly something we're hearing, and we'll discuss. Thanks for bringing it up.
I don't think there's anything available in Walnut. Is there any spaces available on any of the paid lots?
Very limited.
Well,
Yep, there's just limited. There's some in Hickory, but Walnut is full.
I think there's like 3 or
So that's
and
limited.
there's like
a
5
few.
in the.
There's
yep,
not many
5.
left.
Yeah, so those will go quick with.
Yeah, it pays to recognize, though, that there are some public parking lots that we've included in the plan that we're going to message and push to that. I get it. There are a couple more. Thank you. I get it that it's a little bit further of a walk, but those are available and not permitted, so no cost to the employees. Well, I'm going to say it. We should have some more parking options down outside of this area, but we just don't right now, right? So hopefully that is something that remedies itself as we continue to develop our economic stability in the community, right? That'd be wonderful, wouldn't it, to have other options, that this conversation is a much easier one. But we're just in a reality that we don't have that right now. We do have those great lots that are maintained by Doug's excellent crew. I bet you're plowing them right now and are available. And hopefully maybe there's a solution in our future. We're seeing such great things happening in our community right now with building in the district and everything that's coming. Maybe there'll be a piece of that will offer a solution that we'll all look back on in a couple of years and go, ugh, right? I hope.
Any other comments before we open it up to anybody in the audience?
Yeah.
So if you'd like to come up to the podium, that's the only way we can have you. We have no problem with you speaking, but you have to come up to the podium and ask your question on the mic so it's on video.
It's not scary up here. It's fine.
Yeah.
Got warmed up. Like really warmed up right here. Yeah.
And you
you're
just
fine.
need to state your name and your affiliation to downtown for the record, please.
I'm Gina Beretzer, Executive Director for the Downtown Association. I just have one question about the map. On here, I see by Service Drive, the BMO parking lot, which has been bought by the city, has no public parking on it. I'm curious as to if that will be opened once construction is for public. Mm-hmm.
Don't have that, Jess? Or?
Sure, I think, so that's sort of to be determined at this point. Right now, especially rolling it out today, there's going to be a lot of other uses with the construction of the Riverwalk for the next couple of years. So that's something that may be changed as we move forward. But to at least begin this process, we just left it out intentionally at this time.
Okay. And then,
I'm sorry.
Sorry, do I get one more?
No, yeah, you do. You do. But I just want to say you're on the right path because that is something that's been part of our discussion, right? Is to be really transparent with that's not available right now. It's just physically not available.
Yeah,
but
I know it's staging,
we're,
right?
Yep, but it's a living document and it's something that is definitely on the radar. Is again that earlier conversation of I hope we would have some opportunities for some more parking in the future.
And then the other area that would just be questioned, and I know everybody's going to go, yeah, is on the side of the park of the post office. So the police department may not hear parking permits, and Jess does, so do I, a lot of them. So the place next to the post office, I notice on here now it's orange, which means that it's going to be customer only. What is going to happen to all those post office employees? Because if they have to move into the Walnut, there's no more spots left. That will also be taken
They can go on
out.
7th Avenue.
I'm sorry?
7th Avenue is available. They can just move up one street.
On to 7th?
Yep.
During the day, that's packed.
Yep.
That's not going to happen. That's run over by the church. St. John's. Yeah. I'm just saying I'm just asking a question because somebody is going to ask me eventually.
I'll answer. In part, at least, those 3 blue polygons that are on the map are all public parking, and they have 250 spaces available in them,
Oh, and that's it.
and they're mostly empty on any given day.
Okay, perfect.
Again, I think our team is it's very positive because you're asking the same questions that we asked and the same concerns and same things that we're addressing, right? So that's good. That means we're all pushing from the same way.
Any other comments from the audience?
Interested in what you have to say. Okay, thank you.
Oh, okay, we have one.
I'll make a comment about the additional streets. Is drive down those streets now. It's not like it used to be where all the business was on South Main Street and those were residents or small quirky things. It's thriving, and all those businesses on those streets have the same concerns as all of us on Main Street. So I think it's reflective of positive growth. It's pretty cool. Someone's coming up there.
Hi, Carrie Miller from Carrie Lee Studios on 110 South 5th Avenue. I just have a question. Is there a time constraint, an amount of time that is like a concern amount? Like, I'm a service provider, so my services, my clients can be there for 4 hours at a time. So is that an issue at all?
That's a great question, and that was certainly one of the concerns brought up when I suggested looking at time, because that's an easy enforced thing, is that puts a burden on the customer. So in this ordinance, if it's truly a customer and she's there, or he or she are there for a 6 hour, they're a customer. So there's no time concern. And that was something that we remember Captain Pekorski, our other captain, having some very passionate comments for the Transportation Board on, and very much advocating for the customer and not putting the limitations on the customers, advocating for your customers. All right, now we're rolling.
Thank you. My name is Karen Betts, and I'm owner of Clock In at 215 North Main Street. Just a couple of comments, not so much questions, but one, obviously this is a very important topic. You know, we continue to bring more businesses into downtown West Bend, and even more so after we get the downtown construction, the new roads and sidewalks in next year. So public parking is critical. So 2 comments. One is the enforcement of that, the current ordinance. You know, as small business owners, quite honestly, most of the time our businesses have one person in the building, you know, at a time. And so to police the parking just isn't always realistic, right? Some businesses may have someone on hand that can do it, or perchance as they're going in and out, or for those repeat offenders, right? They may notice them. But to police it, we don't always have the capacity to do that. So I think that's, the biggest comment that I hear. I also work with the downtown West Bend specialty shops, and that is a common concern, that it's not consistently enforced, and the expectation that as shop owners that we would have the time to do that, it just unfortunately isn't realistic. Thank you.
I'll make the time.
I hear your comments, I do, but I'll go back to, in order for a community to be safe and effective, it needs to have a community that's engaged. And we're not putting the burden. I mean, I see your point, but I guess I'd redirect that message, and it's not putting the burden on you, it's having you be part of our solution.
That we support 100%.
Yep, part of our solution. And, well, this is where I'll get in trouble with my team a little bit. But we're not looking for the exception, right? We're not looking for the person that came in and dropped off the crock pot of chili for the day, right? And, ooh, we got them. That's not that's not what the police department's about. That's not what the community's about. We're looking for the people that knowingly and intentionally violate the ordinance, that basically say, I don't care about my neighbors, I don't care about the law, I don't care about the social contract. That's the people that we're going to change their behavior. And I'm hopeful, and again, sometimes naive, I'm hopeful there aren't a lot of those, if any. I think people are parking there now because they know the ordinance has no teeth. They know the ordinance is out of date, and once they understand that there'll be consequences and we've re-established clearly our social contract, they're going to comply. And if they don't, we'll re-educate them. We'll start with $20, but it can go up quick.
Can I ask a question, Tim? Didn't you say you're moving towards a technology of plate reading that eventually you'll have a database or the bell will go off for the CSO? So at some point it may not be complaint-based. It might just be technologically handled, or is that far out, or is that soon?
100%. It's going to start complaint-based as we build that database of repeat offenders.
Okay.
But I'm confident in our community. I'm confident that that'll be a limited event, but we'll continue to, it's called a hot list. You put in this plate number, and if you drive through, it'll stop. But we've had conversations about utilizing this technology in the past. So eventually we'll have a database of the repeat offenders, the people that we just described, right? Hopefully there's like 2 of them, right? And that thing will ring. But I'm very confident we're going to hire a great employee or promote a great employee to a full-time position who's going to be engaged in this as well, and they're going to see those offenders before any plate reader. But we'll have the technology because we'll be smart about it.
Thanks.
Any other comments? Okay, then there isn't a real action item. We can give a recommendation to the council, up or down, however we want to do it. We can stay neutral. We can say we don't like it. We can give suggestions of how we would like to see it changed. But it's not something that the bid necessarily has to vote and approve.
It'll come up as council business, as a matter of course. Jay, do you know if we will be doing a public hearing on a changed ordinance like this in council?
We can. We don't have to. I think this was meant to be a public opportunity. I know Jess got it out to the community and through the bid board channels and the downtown business channels, as far as the most directly affected individuals. I think, and what Chief shared with you, is that if the council were to take action to put this ordinance into place, at that point we would really work hard to move forward with a public informational campaign and put some Facebook posts out and actually host a couple of public informational opportunities for people to come in and learn more about the ordinance that's in place. Mike, to your point about the bid board's recommendation, I know you feel strongly about the bid having an opportunity to weigh in on policy items before they go to council. That's what this was meant to be. I think it would be helpful if the bid has a consensus recommendation. It can be as simple as a show of thumbs that you're in favor of the proposed ordinance, or if you have a tweak, as you mentioned, that you suggest, that's fine. But that would be really helpful for Mark and the other aldermen to have your recommendation going into their action, in my opinion. But that's how we try to handle policy decisions that are affected directly in the bid.
And we appreciate that, so thank you. My only suggestion, based on the weather and that it's early morning, if the council does take this up, I would suggest that they maybe have a public session part of that to give people more opportunity, that if they couldn't come today or didn't feel comfortable coming today, they have an opportunity to speak up.
That's certainly something we've discussed and I'm maybe open to, and I would put out to the community, you know where I am. If you have
Yep.
suggestions or you realize that we forgot to address something, call the department, ask to speak to me, and we'll talk. Stop by, wave me down on the street, let's talk. So, but we will definitely push it out publicly. We understand this is different than posting a street, 2-hour park. This is different. This is affects the whole community and is something the community has been engaged in and aware of. So we'll do it correctly.
You get my thumb and my voice up.
So I guess where does everybody want to go with this?
I'm gonna, because I will take
Right.
action at council and carry forward what you're bringing up. I'll recuse from this, but I'm curious how
Do
everybody.
we want to give a thumbs up, everybody? Okay. So Jay, do you want us to write a letter? I should say, do we want Jess to write a letter? Saying that the bid is
Just review the
supportive of
tapes.
it?
We got a thumbs up.
I
Or you're
will be
there,
part
you
of that
can-
project process, so
Okay.
I'll carry that forward.
We've had letters in the past. I'm
Yeah,
happy
both
to-
and I think is the right answer. Yep,
Yeah.
Mark can certainly carry that water, and a letter signed by you, Mike, as consensus of the bid board would be very powerful for the council to take action.
Okay.
Good idea. Thank
All right.
you.
With that, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody, for
Thank
coming.
you.
Drive safe.